What's up guys, it's Tearless here. Welcome back to the Dream Grove for the very last time. This is the second video looking into the changes for a Guardian Druid in World of Warcraft Legion. Guardian Druid being the last specialization that we have to go through for all Druid specializations in World of Warcraft Legion. Now, I did mention at the end of the last video, which focused on the changed abilities, removed abilities, and new abilities for Guardian Druid, as well as the artifact weapon, that I would show you the new ability Dream Grove, and I did not do that. So before we get into the PvE and PvP talents, which is what this ability is all about, I am going to show you Dream Walk, which I got the name a little bit wrong there, but it is Dream Walk, and it will be replacing your teleport Moonglade, and this is how you get to your class order hall. And it's a pretty cool ability because it sends you to the Emerald Tree, and then it gives you access to various places around Azeroth. As I open up this map here so you can see full screen, you can see I have access to the Dream Grove, which is your class order hall, but I also have access to Mount Hyjal, Hinterlands, Duskwood, Moonglade, Faralos, and Grizzly Hills. So I still have my good old, teleport to Moonglade, so to say, but at the same time I now have access to many other places across Azeroth, which makes the spell that much more, I guess, useful than it used to be. Especially, I mean, it basically gives you as much, it gives you as much ability as a mage to be able to traverse Azeroth. Basically, a mage no longer can one-up you in terms of their ability to traverse Azeroth, because when you think about it, stuff like teleport Theramore Isle is kind of negated by teleport Faralos. Same thing with Stonard and Duskwood for a Horde player. So it's really kind of cool how much, it gives you in terms of being able to navigate Azeroth. I mean, even a spell such as Teleport Dalaran, or the old Dalaran, is counteracted by the fact that a Druid can now instantly get to Grizzly Hills. So, really cool ability that they have there, the Dream Walk, and that is what gets them to the Dream Grove. So, that was a little detour, but let's go ahead and get into the PvE and PvP talents for a Guardian Druid in World of Warcraft Legion. Now, not much has really changed in the talent tree compared to other talent trees, I should say. There are a lot of changes. I would say there isn't a single tree that doesn't have at least 50% of its tree completely changed. So there are a lot of changes in the trees. However, I will say that this is one of the trees in which almost entire tiers are coming back almost untouched. So it is one of the more unchanged trees, but that does not mean that a lot has changed, that there hasn't been a lot of changes in it. So with that, let's look at the 15 tier. First, we have a new one called Brambles. Sharp Brambles protect you, absorbing and reflecting up to 4,000 damage from each attack. While Barkskin is active, the Brambles also deal 7,100 nature damage to all nearby enemies for 1 second. So we'll go ahead and use this here, and I'm going to use Brambles. It protects me, but then you can see I'm also dealing damage immediately to everyone around me. So that's pretty cool, just AoE damage right off the bat out of having Barkskin active. So that's pretty cool. Now remember, Barkskin's on a pretty decent cooldown, so you have to be careful of using this, but it is an option there. Over here we have Blood Frenzy, excuse me. Thrash also generates 2 rage each time it deals damage. So in the last video, I explained how Thrash would basically only be dealing 4 damage, 4 rage, for the immediate attack. The way it used to work was it would deal 1 rage per damage per target. So if you were hitting 3 targets, it would deal damage per second, and it lasted for 16 seconds, so you would get 16 rage times 3 out of it, so you get a lot of rage out of it. Now, you get 2 rage each time it deals damage, so I'm going to go ahead and use this here, and we will see that the dots on it are actually going to give us a lot of rage out of this. So, this is actually, in my opinion, a really desirable ability to have, and probably going to be the more popular option in PvP, because you're going to be able to launch this off with a bunch of targets and get a lot of rage out of it. Because comparatively to all of the other classes that generate rage, I would say I haven't gotten to Prot Warrior, but this one definitely generates rage slower definitely than Arms and Fury. Fury and Arms have a ridiculous rate of rage generation, so Blood Frenzy may be the option. And I was wrong. It does not tick every second. It looks like Thrash ticks every 3 seconds or so. So it'll be about every 3 seconds that you get a tick from this. So in total, a Thrash on 3 different targets will end up being about 5 ticks. It'll be 10 rage. So 3 targets will give you a total of 34 rage from it. And yes, that's exactly what I'm showing up here in the top bar. So that is what you'll be getting out of Blood Frenzy. The last option here is Bristling Fur. Now this had to be changed because as mentioned in the last video, basically they've kind of changed how you mitigate damage. You're now the big, tank with a lot of health. And so they had to change Bristling Fur a little bit. Before, you bristle your fur, reducing all damage taken by 40% for 3 seconds. The new version is really kind of different completely. You bristle your fur, causing you to generate rage based on the damage taken for 8 seconds. So this is more now of a rage generation as opposed to something that will actually be more of a defensive item. The old one was a 30-second cooldown. The new one is a 40-second cooldown, but in all essence, they are different abilities. They just have the same icon and the same first 3 words of the text, I guess you could say. You bristle your fur, and then this one is bristle your fur, so a little bit of a change there, but for the most part, it is a completely new ability. And it is put all the way up into the 15 tier, down from the 100 tier, so a big change there. 30 tier is one of the tiers that really has not changed much. Displacer, Beast, and Wild Charge are not any different from how they are on Alive, so do not expect any changes there. Wild Charge still is the same, I guess you could say the same length or range. I was just checking to make sure that it was the same range. It is indeed the same range. Same cooldown, same thing with Displacer Beast. The only difference here is going to be guttural roars. If I pronounced that correctly, I didn't even know that was a word. Increases the radius of your Stampeding Roar by 200%. So your original radius on Stampeding Roar is only 10 yards, so 200% would be, 30 yards, if I got that correctly. 200% increased radius on it. And the increased radius on Incapacitating Roar by 100%. Your Incapacitating Roar is at a 10 yard, so it'll be a 20 yard range on that. And the cooldown of Stampeding Roar is reduced by 50%, so it'll bring it down to a 1 minute cooldown as opposed to a 2 minute cooldown. So a lot of options there, and then it goes against Wild Charge and Displacer Beast. I would assume Wild Charge would still probably be the option of choice for a Bear Druid. It's really nice to have that charge as a Bear Druid. 45 tier is the tier that's always the most important for all Druid specs now, and it is choosing your affinity. As I mentioned in the first video, Thick Hide is basically there because it is the affinity passive for a Guardian Druid. Now, you're not going to see Guardian affinity because you're a Guardian Druid. Instead, you're going to see the affinities for the others, which are Isir's Gift, heals you for 3% of your maximum health every 5 seconds. Feline Swiftness, which is your movement, increases your movement speed by 15%. That used to be a baseline talent on the old 15 tier, which is now the 30 tier. It's where Guttural Roars is now. And then the other option as Astral Influence increases the range of all your abilities by 5 yards. Now, I'm not gonna lie, for almost every single spec that I've played in Legion for a Druid, I have preferred a different affinity. So I've actually chosen a different affinity for each one of these. And my favorite one for a Guardian Druid is actually a Restoration affinity. Because Swift Men is instant cast, you don't need Rejuvenation on yourself. You can cast Rejuve and Swift Men, it won't knock Swift Men off, so you can get some quick heals on yourself by popping out of bear form real quick, and then you can jump back into bear form and then continue to heal yourself up and so forth. So it's like getting your own self-heal, and so that's why I really like this affinity better than the others. And as I mentioned, abilities like Rejuvenation would come back in the talent tree if you chose them. They have been removed from baseline Guardian, and you can get them back in through the talent tree depending on which one of these options you choose. The Feral Affinity, you get Shred and Ferocious Bite back, which you didn't have before, but in addition you'll also get Rake and Rip, and your energy regeneration is increased by 35%. This may be a very popular option for those that like to flip in and out and deal a little bit more damage as a Bear Druid. Maybe in a PvE setting, you would like to do more damage. If you're the off tank or something, or you're the third tank for the reasons needing a third tank or so forth, you can choose Feral Affinity and actually put some DPS out for your raid as opposed to just sitting there in the bear form not really doing much. So that's really an option. I'm still liking the Rejuvenation and Swift Mend though that I get out of this. The Rejuvenation's back from... If you choose Restoration Affinity, you get Rejuvenation back, and then you also get Regrowth and Swiftman, so it's really nice to have those heals there. But Feral Affinity is not something to be overlooked. And for the same reasons that I love on my Feral to have Balance Affinity, having Astral Influence to have increased range of your abilities by 5 yards is pretty potent, considering that it affects all abilities, and so that means all your melee attacks then have a greater range. If you're a PvPer, this is the only class I could see. Oh yeah, I can only see PvPers taking this. PvEers definitely will be either going Feral or Resto, depending on the situation. But Balance is good, not really for Moonkin form, because Moonkin form actually has a cooldown. I don't know why they did that, but it has a cooldown. And then you really aren't going to want to stay in that form casting spells when you could be doing stuff like actually, you know, being in Guardian form would be much more potent and actually useful to it. The only reason I like it in Feral Affinity is because having an extra 5 yards on your range is really strong as Feral in PvP, whereas in Guardian it's not so big of a deal because you're not necessarily supposed to be like top of the line damage dealer. You're supposed to be more of a flag carrier, but you can dish out a lot of damage at the same time. So it's going to be up to you to decide which affinity that you like the best. I personally, as a Guardian Druid, like Restoration Affinity. As Feral, I like Balance Affinity. As a Restoration Druid, I believe the choice that I chose was Feral Affinity, because having the extra movement speed, I can get around quicker with my Hots healing at all the time, and so I can escape better. And then I think as a Balance Druid, I took Guardian Affinity. So I have taken different affinities on each one of the different specs, so it's kind of cool that you have that option out there to kind of pick and choose what you want to do. In the 60 tier, this also has generally not changed at all. They've taken Mighty Bash from the 75 tier, which is you've already gotten Incapacitating Roar baseline. Ursol's Vortex is basically a PvE talent, or PvP, for Restoration Druids only, or maybe baseline for Restoration Druids only. I just know that it's Restoration only. So basically, Mighty Bash was the only thing left on that tier, and they took out Fairy Fire. So Fairy Swarms out, and they just added it in this tier. So Mass Entanglement works the same, Typhoon works the same, I believe the same cooldowns for them. So everything is still the same on those two, and then Mighty Bash comes in the same. It still functions the same. 50-second cooldown, 5-second stun, usable in all forms. So 60 tier, not much has changed at all. 75 tier, used to be the 60 tier. A lot has not changed here. Now, Force of Nature has become a balance-only ability, so that has been taken out. But Soul of the Forest remains, and it remains in the same way that it is on live, and so is Incarnation Guardian of Ursoc. It's called Son of Ursoc on live. It's called Guardian of Ursoc here. The only changes is that Mangle can now hit up to 3 targets. That was not a part of the old Incarnation. I think it might have been an old Incarnation type form for Feral Druids at one point, maybe back in Mists of Pandaria, because I do remember there being a big buff in which your Mangle would hit up to 3 targets. That was, of course, before Mangle was taken away from Feral Druids. So that may be, it's coming back now in this Incarnation Guardian of Ursoc, but otherwise the rest of the spell is the same, 3-minute cooldown. And it reduces the cooldown of melee abilities and growl to 1.5 seconds, etc. So that's all still there, except for the addition is that you can now hit up to 3 targets with Mangle. Soul Forest is still 5 more rage and 15% more damage. That is how it is on live. The new one here, though, is my favorite. And this was actually broken at first, and I think if you look in the the intro video, you can see how broken this was. It's called Galactic Guardian. and your damage has a 10% chance to trigger a free automatic Moonfire on the target. When this occurs, the next Moonfire you cast generates 15 rage. So, this is pretty cool in the fact that it's all damage. So, bleed damage can affect this as well, and Moonfire damage can affect this as well. So if I come up here and use Thrash, I'm going to put bleed damage on all these targets. So they have 5 ticks to start a Moonfire. So there was a Moonfire started on the left there, and then that Moonfire can, on top of that, restart the Moonfire as well. So they all have a 10% chance per tick. We just got one on the right-hand side. So you can just sit here and create a lot of Moonfires by using Thrash over and over again, or Swipe over and over again. That's what makes it so much fun, and that's what I love about it. It's just like when you have a lot of AoE targets, you can literally, it's like a laser light show. They nerfed it. It used to be 50%, and that's what made it so much fun, was I was literally having my own light show, and then they realized, they're like, it's too powerful, what we'll do, or it may be like too graphically intensive, having Moonfires proc all over the place. It's almost kind of like if you ever saw Chandra's Feathermoon in a battle. It's the most powerful raid boss ever until they nerfed her. I think they nerfed her, but she's one of the most powerful raid bosses in the entire game, and she can wipe an entire raid if they're not paying attention, just by the mass Moonfire spam that she does. If you ever want to, go look up kiting Chandra's Feathermoon to Orgrimmar. You can see her absolutely obliterate Garrosh and everyone. It's hilarious. Anyways, that's kind of what I felt with Galactic Guardian. So it was a real disappointment when they cut it from 50% down to 10%, but still, it is my favorite option, just because it's so much fun to have that. I did not see an instance of it happening here, but I do believe that the Moonfires that you set on the target do indeed have a chance to actually re-trigger the Moonfire and continue that damage to go forth, which is pretty strong. I wish I could show an example here. Maybe I will get an example, because there are only Moonfires on the target, so if another Moonfire pops up on either one of these targets, you'll know that to be true. But that is an option that was originally in place. They may have changed it so that only one Moonfire can actually occur, which may have been the option to make sure that it doesn't become too overpowered. But all in all, this is a really cool ability. I love it. In the 90 tier, we have Earth Warden. This is a new one. Every 6 seconds, you gain a charge up Earth Warden, reducing damage of the next auto attack you take by 30%. Earth Warden may have up to 3 charges. This could be powerful depending on which bosses you use. Which bosses you're up against, excuse me, in a raid. I'm not sure how strong it'll be in PvP, because you're getting auto-attacked a lot, so I don't feel like it'd be too strong there in PvP. But in PvE, I think it does have some situational uses, depending on how ability-based the boss is, you know, etc., versus how much auto-attack based it is. Guardian of Valune used to be in the 100 tier. It's basically been changed completely, because, as I mentioned, it's no longer a dodge-focused theme for a Guardian Druid. It is health-based theme as a Guardian Druid. So the old version was all about Savage Defense, increasing your dodge. That's gone now. Get rid of it, because Savage Defense is gone anyways. And instead now, Mangle increases the duration of your next Iron Fur or Mark of Ursol by 2 seconds, or the healing of your next Frenzied Regeneration by 20%. So Guardian of Valune really is just an increase to your sustainability. I'm guessing that this will likely be the most popular option for a Guardian Druid. In PvE and likely for PvP as well. It's a lot of uses out of it, and it's really strong. PvP, Bark Skin and Survival Instincts cooldowns being reduced by 33% may be more popular. That'll bring Survival Instincts down to, I mean, we'll activate it right here so we can see just how far it goes down, to 2.67 per charge. So it's like a 1.3433 cooldown time on Survival Instincts. So that's actually pretty good. That likely will be used in PvP, I think, without question. You have a sub 1 minute cooldown on Barkskin as well. But Guardian of Elune I can see being more of a PvE option. I'm not an expert on Guardian Druids in tanking. I have not used Guardian Druid as a tank in a very long time. So things have changed since then, and you know, it may not be the most popular option, but I would not look over these two talents. Earth Warden, once again, I think it has very specific places in which it can be used. Otherwise, I think for the most part, PvEers and PvPers will be looking at Survival of the Fittest and Guardian of Elune instead of Earth Warden. Now, Survival of the Fittest was an old ability, baseline ability. It was just a flat stat buff, so just take note that it's not the same anymore. The name has been retained as well as the icon, but it's completely different. In the 100 tier, we have Rend and Tear. While in bear form, Thrash increases the damage dealt to the target and reduces the damage taken from the target by 2% per application of Thrash. Any heavy AoE fight, I can see PvE are taking this without question. Because getting all of that damage reduction, I think, is really strong. And so I think that'll be the option, to be able to have that. To have that damage reduction from Rend and Tear and the damage increase from it, I think it'll be probably the most popular option to take. So that will be AoE fights specifically, though. You have Pulverize over here. Now, Pulverize used to interact with Lacerate. Now, as I mentioned, Lacerate no longer basically, excuse me, Lacerate is no longer in the game, and instead Thrash has basically taken over its kind of what it did before. Now, it used to take 3 stacks of Lacerate for you to be able to use Pulverize. Now it only takes 2 stacks of Thrash damage, Thrash bleed damage to activate this. I'm just refreshing this up to 3 just so I can keep it refreshed up here. And it lasts for 20 seconds instead of 12 seconds. And it will reduce damage you take by only 8% instead of 15%. So its damage reduction has been nerfed. Its duration has been increased. As far as the damage is concerned, I'm not too sure as to how much damage extra it does now. I honestly couldn't tell you that because damage numbers are kind of difficult to compare here on live. The only thing that I can really compare is like when I was comparing Thrash damage. I noticed that 82,000 is a whole lot more than 25,000, so I could tell that the main, the bulk of the damage would be up front with Thrash now instead of being on the backside with the bleed. So that's the only extent of what I can do from damage comparison. That's because numbers are still changing. It's a very fluid situation in terms of damage numbers and healing numbers in the game, but abilities are mostly in place. So we'll go ahead and use Pulverize here. You'll see nice spell visuals as always, and it's still there functioning as normal. So pretty nice there. It's nice that it only consumes 2 of the stacks of the Thrash on the target instead of all 3, so you can still keep the Thrash at least on the target, 1 stack of Thrash on the target, and then you can build up from there again. So that is an option that is open to you. So with that being said, let's change to Lunar Beam, which is a brand new one. Summons a beam of lunar light at your location, dealing a 239,000 arcane damage and healing you for 514,000 over 8 seconds. This is really powerful. 514,000 is about a fifth of your health. It's really strong. Let's just put it at that. So I'm going to go ahead and use Lunar Beam now. You can see right here, I've got this really cool, just kind of large area of effect beam, and I'm healing for a ton. 64,000 per tick, and I'm dealing damage at the same time. It's a very long cooldown. It's something that I probably would expect to see. Actually, this is something I can see in both PvP and PvE, because you plop this down as a bear tank, you know, trying to hold off people on a flag, trying to hold on to the flag in a capture the flag match, or hold on to a node in a node-based map, and you're able to plop this down and keep yourself alive for a longer period of time, at the same time dealing a lot of damage to them, so people kind of have to back off. So this, I think, has great PvP and PvE potential. Pulverize, considering its reduction from 15 down to 8%, I don't know how popular it will be. And then Rend and Tear, as I said, will be the PvE option, I think, in terms of AoE damage in a fight. I don't know how popular it will be in PvP, but in PvE, I think that will be the option. So, with that, let's go ahead and take a look at the honor talents coming to a Guardian Druid in World of Warcraft Legion. Now, basically, PvP functions differently in World of Warcraft Legion than it does in Warlords of Draenor. It's like Call of Duty. You will start at level 1, you'll work your way all the way up to level 50, and you'll gain talents as you do that. You'll start off with Gladiator's Medallion at level 1. By level 10, you'll have Charging Bash. Then you start up at the top here with Adaptation at level 13. You'll move down to Entangling Claws. Then do the same, rinse and repeat for the third tier, and Overrun will be given to you at level 46, and then at 50 you can prestige and get like a pet, a mount, whatever it is, depends on the level. I believe the first one's a pet, and then a mount comes maybe at like level 4 or something, I can't quite remember. So, you can choose to prestige and lose all your talents again and start back over, or you can be like, I'm done, I don't really care about the mounts and pets, I'm just going to keep all my talents and just go with that. So it's entirely up to you. With that being said, let's look at the first tier, which is all about honor talents, or your honorable medallion, I should say. You get an honorable medallion when you enter APG for the first time, and it's like a 3-minute trinket. It's like an heirloom trinket, okay? Now you can replace that heirloom trinket with a gladiator's medallion, which is like your basic 2-minute trinket. Your second option here is adaptation, which is all loss control effects with a duration of 5 seconds or more will activate your honorable medallion, but only causes it to incur a 60-second cooldown. So basically, you have a 60-second trinket, but you don't have control over it. Now you can use Honorable Medallion, but it will cause adaptation to incur a 30-second cooldown. So if things are really dire, you can still pop the Honorable Medallion, but then it does bring adaptation of a cooldown. Now Relentless is something that I've only seen Resto Druids and tanks taking. So we're finally getting to tanks for the first time. And this is something that could possibly be taken by tanks, because it replaces your Honorable Medallion, but at the same time, the duration of all incoming crowd control effects is reduced by 25%. That's pretty potent, especially if you're a tank, a flag carrier, and you're always going to have a healer with you. Relentless may be a great option to have. In the second tier, we actually are seeing the tank tier for the first time. We have Relentless Assault. Being attacked increases your damage by 3%, lasts for 5 seconds, stacked up to 5 times. If you're going to be attacked a lot as a Guardian Druid, you know, why not? It's just base damage buff. There's Alpha Challenge. Your Growl has a reduced range but causes the enemy player to be intimidated, increasing their damage taken by 20% for 6 seconds. Your melee attacks refresh the duration of the intimidated. This is incredibly strong, and let's get to Soften Blows before I make any more judgments. Soften Blows passive. Any non-periodic attack that deals damage less than 10% of your maximum health is reduced by 20%. So this basically just gives you a lot of sustain. It's a flat damage reduction on all like dots, basically. It's a flat 20% reduction on all dots, on all small damage. The only thing that will not mitigate this is going to be non-periodic damage. So anything that like your basic Fireball and your Shadow Bolt isn't going to do much, but maybe Chaos Bolt, Pyro Blast, definitely Glacial Spike off of a Frost Mage will not be able to mitigate this damage, but it will be able to mitigate a lot of other abilities. So there's a lot of damage reduction here, but this in a team setting is too strong. Alpha Challenge in a rated battleground will most likely be the #1 chosen talent, because you can just run out there, use Growl, and focus down target. I mean, it's like Tyranda's Hunter's Mark, I think that's what it's called, in Heroes of the Storm, and it's so strong. So your Growl is on an 8-second cooldown, I believe. Let's look at this right here. It's at an 8-second cooldown, so you have a 75% uptime on this Alpha Challenge. That's really strong. I don't know how you can get away from that. Even if you're like a flag defense and you need more damage reduction, being able to pick out people that you need to get rid of, maybe the offensive healer with Alpha Challenge, is just too strong, and I see pretty much every tank taking this. In the next tier, We have Protector of the Grove, using Healing Touch on an ally. Always critically heals and reduces the cast having your next Healing Touch by 50% for 6 seconds. I don't really like this one. I don't like using Healing Touch as a Guardian Druid. I'd rather use the other abilities as a Guardian Druid. I'd rather stay in my bear form as a Guardian Druid, so I really do not like this. I'd rather take Restoration Affinity and use Swift Mend and Rejuvenation and so forth, and then also my own Frenzied Regeneration than doing something like this. There's Hibernating Growth. When you remain in bear form for 10 seconds, there's a tooltip error there. So when you remain in bear form for 10 seconds, the cast time of your next healing touch is reduced by 75%. Well, that would be great if I had Protector of the Grove with it, but I don't. So once again, it's also using Healing Touch, and I don't really like Healing Touch. Just to give you an idea, we're going to use Healing Touch here. I'm surprised it didn't kick me out of form. It should. So I use Healing Touch there. I got healed for 123,000. Regrowth from my abilities basically is 66,000 with a hot for a while, and then Rejuvenation is going to be a lot of healing over time. So I don't know. I really don't like these abilities dealing with Healing Touch. The last option here is Toughness. The duration of all stun effects are reduced by 25%. This will be the #1 talent taken. I can tell you right now, I've been starting to really delve into PvP, which is more getting closer to endgame. As we're getting closer to the very end of beta here, the live version of 7.0 is not far away. And I can tell you right now that the stuns are devastating in PvP. Especially from something like a Havoc Demon Hunter who has an AoE stun. They're devastating in PvP, and so I can see Toughness easily being the talent taken here. In the next tier, we have Dead Mother. When your Iron Fur is also applied to the lowest health member of your party or raid within 10 yards. This is nice. 10 yards is way too small. It needs to be 40 yards for this to actually be worth something. I think 10 yards is way too small, and so I don't see this being taken unless they increase the yardage on this ability. There's Protector of the Pack. 20% of all damage done to nearby allies is redirected to you. This effect is disabled when you fall below 35% health. This can be really strong. This puts a lot of stress off of your healers, and depending on the map in a rated battleground setting, this will probably be the option. Maybe not if you're a flag carrier, but if it's a node-based map, easily I can see this being an item taken, just because it allows you to mitigate a lot of damage to your raid, and it really kind of takes the stress off your healers, because in those node maps you're more kind of trying to burst down all of the DPS and get them out of the way, and the healers, as opposed to trying to get the tank, whereas the tank in a capture flag is more the one taking the damage. So there's going to be a little bit of difference depending on what map you're in, and you can change your talents as you're setting up for a map, so you can kind of choose there. Last option here is Demoralizing Roars. Demoralizes all enemies within 10 yards, reducing the damage they do by 20% for 8 seconds. So this one I really do like. You see the whole opposing team blow their cooldowns, Demoralizing Roar, and you can really do help out there. Once again, though, it's another 10-yard radius. I really don't like this small radius. I feel like it needs to be something like... maybe I went a little overboard with Dead Mother. 20 yards would be sufficient, but there definitely needs to be an increase in the radius for these yards here. 10 yards is just too small. 10 yards is going to be about, if I'm correct... 10 yards, actually I can do it. This is actually the best way to tell you what 10 yards is. I'll switch to Balance Affinity, and 10 yards is right here. So 10 yard radius around where I am. So basically I can hit all of these training dummies here in a 10 yard radius. It's a really small radius. It needs to be more something like 20 yards, and 20 yards would be something like this. So 20 yards, I would hit the training dummies in the back, I would hit the training dummies behind me, I would hit the training dummies in front of me, and I think that would be more acceptable in terms of range. So I hope they look at that with Den Mother and Demoralizing Roar. Protector of the Pack really does have some opportunity, though, on node-based maps, and I consider it being probably in just normal, PvP, Maybe in randoms, maybe not so popular because you'll want to make sure that you have a healer with you, but if you have a healer with you, I can easily, if you're in random, see this as being the popular item taken, especially if you're talking about mass world PvP. This also, I think, would be an option that would be taken because then you would probably have some dedicated healers. In the 5th tier, we have Clan Defender. When nearby allies within 15 yards are critically hit, so 15 yards is much better, are critically hit by any attack, you automatically trigger your Gore effect. And Gore is using Thrash, Swipe, or Moonfire as a 20% chance to reset the cooldown of Mangle and cause it to generate 4 additional rage. That basically allows you to have a lot of rage generation through Gore. And so basically, this will automatically give you a lot of free Mangles to be able to use with 15 yards. There's Enraged Mangle, which actually replaces your Mangle. It gives it a... I better switch off of Astral Affinity so I don't get any of these ranges mixed up for you. Melee range, so 15 rage. It costs 15 rage. The original form of Mangle actually will generate 6 rage, so this one will cost 15 rage. Mangle the target for 174,000 damage and deals 20% additional damage to bleeding targets. It does a lot of damage, but I really don't see the reason why you would take this. I mean, I know Maul doesn't do much damage, but still, Mangle's already dealing 116,000 damage. So the cooldown is gone. So it has burst potential, I'll give it that. So you stack yourself up to 100, you're able to get 6 Mangles off in the row and just deal tons of damage to the target. So that's where it can be really potent. Because Mangle generally has a cooldown. So if you're able to generate rage outside of combat pretty well, this could be pretty powerful. So this is an option for burst damage. So if you're going more of a DPS-oriented tank, this could be a very good option for you to have. Otherwise, I would probably stick to Mangle. Your other option here is Sharpened Claws while in bear form. Thrash deals 100% more initial damage now, but now costs 15 rage. So 15, before it didn't cost anything. So now it will do 100% more initial damage, but cost 15 rage. There's no reason for you to take Enraged Mangle. There's literally no reason for you to take Enraged Mangle. So basically, think about it this way. So it deals roughly the same amount of damage. We're talking Thrash versus Enraged Mangle. Sharpened Claws versus Enraged Mangle. Deals roughly the same damage, but they're both 15 rage. However, this has a larger radius, and it will no longer, and in terms, it will hit many targets. So I guess you can make the argument this is single target burst damage, Enraged Mangle, whereas Sharpened Claws is dealing a lot of AoE damage, but at the cost of 15 rage. So you got some options here in this tier. You know, more AoE damage, put some more AoE pressure, make their healer feel the stress, or deal some single target damage and make their healer, you know, kind of have some more stress in terms of single target. They're already going to get that with Alpha Challenge, so maybe Enraged Mangle works better with that. Now, I will say that basically one thing that you should note is that some targets, you're going to be able to choose beforehand which talents you like better than the other. Before the match, you're going to be able to see, you know, what kind of healers they have. You're going to be able to look at them and be like, okay, they've got a Restoration Druid as their healer. That's a lot of AoE healing, and Mistweaver Monk, let's say. That's a lot of AoE healing, so I think maybe I should probably go for something like Enraged Mangle so I can do a lot of single target damage, because the Sharpened Claws is just going to be canceled out with their massive AoE healing. But if you look on the other team and they have more single target healers, like, I guess probably a good example would be a Holy Paladin, let's say, and the new Shaman, which is kind of backed off AoE healing, though its AoE healing should be still pretty strong. You can be like, okay, no, let's do a lot of AoE damage here with Sharpened Claws. So you can make that determination before a match and be like, I'll change based on the situation, which is really cool. So you have options. It's always great when I'm looking at these trees and they actually do have a lot of options for you. It's not just, it really isn't cookie cutter. I look at a lot of these trees, and they've really done a good job of making it clear that there are a lot of options for you for different situations and who may be on the opposing team. In the last tier, we have Charging Bash. Increases the range of your Skull Bash by 10 yards. Skull Bash is melee range, so this gives it 15-yard range. If you have Astral Influence, it's a 10-yard range, and then this brings up to 20 yards. I don't really like it. I'm not a big fan of it. Remember, your Skull Bash is like a 24, it should be a 15-second cooldown. We'll look at it right here just to make sure. So it is a 15-second cooldown. It's got a 13-yard range already. So increasing it by another 10 yards, I think it's just kind of, I don't know, I think it's kind of going over the edge, and it's something you really don't need. Let me make sure I don't have Astral. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't have Balance Affinity on. I'm not a fan of this talent. You have Entangling Claws, which is Entangling Roots is now instant cast spell with a 6-second cooldown, but with a 10-yard range. It can also be cast while in shapeshift form. So this is kind of cool. This gives you a 10-yard root at all times if you have Astral Influence in PvP. Definitely, if you take Astral Influence or the Balance Affinity, you can have Entangling Claws, which would be pretty cool. Because you'd always have that root. It's on a 60-second cooldown root. That's really strong, and it's going to be really frustrating for players. I think the only one that can be more frustrating is a silly survival hunter with their 40-yard range root nets, which I know people will be crying about. So this is a great option for you to much better than Charging Bash. The last option here is called Overrun, which is a 15-second charge, charging the enemy, stunning them for 3 seconds, and knocking back their allies within 15 yards. That's pretty strong. So you can basically single someone out with Overrun, use Alpha Challenge, and have your team jump on him because you kicked away all of his friends 15 yards back. So it's like clearing the area, I guess you could say. Honestly, I see this being the talent taken. I think Overrun is easily the talent taken. Maybe in arenas, a Tangling Claws will be more of an option. I just don't see Charging Bash being taken all. I see definitely Overrun being probably the popular option here, with Entangling Claws having its options in different ways, depending on what you want to do. So, with that, that's everything for Guardian Druid in World of Warcraft Legion. This is the first of the tank series that we are going through. This is the last time that you guys will see the Dream Grove, unless I decide to do a class order haul kind of preview. It depends. We're really getting towards the end of Legion here, so I don't know how much time we have left. But the Dream Grove definitely is one of the larger class hauls, so it would be one that kind of deserves a kind of look at what you have at your disposal here inside this class hall. So it's a possibility. By the way, in case you haven't noticed, the weather effects have really been intensified in this game, and I really do like it. You can see the rain just pouring down out here, so it's pretty cool. But otherwise, that is everything for Guardian Druid in World of Warcraft Legion. This is the last of the Druid specs and the first of the tank specs. We are now going through all 6 tank specs from here on out. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I hope you guys enjoyed Druids overall and Guardians. I think Guardians are going to be a lot more fun to play with now that they are just like the big health bears. It's going to be a lot of fun. So I hope to see a lot of bears out there in Legion. I hope to see you guys out there in Legion. This is Tearless. I'll see you guys later.